My name's Brian Nugent. I'm the Alliance Manager for EPAM, who takes care of the Mock Alliance ecosystem. Greatly happy to have you all here today. As you can see, we're doing a bit of a run around because we're waiting for a third person. But while we're waiting, let's get the introductions out of the way for you. So again, thank you very much for attending. Introductions, we're going to talk about our experts, who's going to be coming on the stage and who's going to be showing up in the back door when I call his name, because we want to have that movie moment, right? But also, we're going to talk about EPAM and Don Food's story. Then we're going to go through things about how did they go through their journey for Mock. I actually kind of changed things around. I gave Lee and Gireesh a bunch of questions that I was going to ask them over the last little while. And last night I was like, you know what, I got a whole bunch of other questions that you guys were asking me during the event. So I'm going to wrote them down. I'm going to ask away while we're going through things from there. So let's dig in. Introductions to our experts. We have Lee Trotter, who's on stage right now, and Gireesh, who is, like I say, we'll call him in a minute. We'll all look at the back door, okay? Lee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. My name is Lee Trotter. I am in our mock growth practice at EPAM, and my goal is to work with new and existing customers of ours on where they want to go, right? So much like the customer stories that you heard this morning about how a company would start from a monolith, they were having problems, they couldn't do things, the technology was the blocker. One of my goals is to help companies see what those problems are, see the what's on fire, why did you call us, and help them realize how to get to that end state and define those goals and see how Mock can be that, and see how Mock can move them into a type of company that can look at a customer-first centric approach, so that that's what's driving you as opposed to the technology that's driving you, right? So break out of the box and become more composable, become that functional thing that you need. And just
the other person is
introduction.
As I said, he was going to come in just to... Gireesh?
Hey, sorry guys. Had to take an urgent call. Everything's fine. The site is working. Stuff happens, you know, when you're running a business. This is what day-to-day looks like. Sorry.
Introductions about yourself.
Gireesh Sahukar. I'm the VP of Digital at Don Foods. If you don't know what Don Foods is, we are a B2B manufacturer and distributor of bakery ingredients. We make things like cake mixes, donut mixes, filling, icing, glazing, anything that a professional bakery needs. We manufacture and distribute those things to those bakeries. We're a B2B only company. We don't sell to consumers. All of our products are made and sold to bakers. They are sold in big packages, 25-pound cake mixer bags, 50-pound bags, 5-gallon pails, 10-gallon pails. So nothing that you would want to buy and use in your house. If you're a baker and you see a couple heads nodding, you know what I mean. We have been on a Mock journey for about 4 years now. We went to e-commerce when a few years ago the company was asking itself, we're hitting our 100 years in business. What do we need to do to stay in business for the next 100 years? Based on that question, and we did a lot of research. We asked our customers how they would like to do business with us. And we did a lot of analysis of what the industry is going through. And the answer was to offer more self-service capabilities. When that self-service capabilities essentially turned into, we need to offer a B2B e-commerce solution. The company brought in a chief digital officer. We ran a pilot to understand how the market would react to e-commerce. There wasn't any of our competitors in the space offering e-commerce solution at the time. So we pulled a team together to work on it. The chief digital officer recruited me. If you were here at ContentCon last year, you saw our chief digital officer, Bob Holland, present a keynote. We're going to talk some more about that journey and where we are now a year later.
Thanks, Gireesh. So, like I said, I wrote down a bunch of questions I gave to these guys ahead of time so they kind of know. And then last night, I kind of changed a little bit of some of the stuff. That's how you were mentioning yesterday. So I'm going to hold the phone here. I got my questions set up for us. So let's kind of go through some of it. So this is an open discussion. I really want to pick these guys' brains. They're the experts on it, kind of help you guys help out everybody here as far as their journey, going through mock, composable, headless, and all the rest of it from there. So that said, first part, overcoming some of the common pitfalls, right? Let's just level set, guys. Lee, mock, what is it?
I was here on time. So what is mock? So we saw this morning, microservices, API, and AAC, cloud, and headless, right? And some of those feel like the same things, but really it's a philosophy, right? It's a best of breed philosophy where you want to take the products that suit your organization best and wire them together. And the mock alliance and the mock philosophy is the companies that are in that are buying into that same mindset. So they are companies that in their DNA, they want to connect with other companies. There's lots of companies out there that say, hey, we're composable and stuff. But if you look at what they're actually doing, they're not, right? But you look at companies like Content Stack, and they're saying, no, we know we have to connect with others. We know we're part of an ecosystem. We are not the ecosystem. And that's one of the core foundational elements when you're doing a product selection in mock, is to ensure that the technologies you're picking are designed to be integrated with others so that they can expand beyond what you need today, because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, right? We don't know, heaven forbid, what the next pandemic will bring, right? Or the next global thing that changes how we all do business overnight. And mock allows you to pivot very quickly to make those things happen so that you can do those changes fast, right?
So great explanation there. So Gireesh, what made you choose mock? What was the big pusher to go to that technology?
Yeah, for us, it was more of a aha moment. When we started on our e-commerce journey, when I came into this role and started looking at what tools and technologies and frameworks do I need to run e-commerce successfully, my inclination was that there would be 3 or 4 different vendors. And having been in e-commerce for 15 years, I knew a lot of the monoliths. I was previous to this role, I was running one of the largest direct-to-consumer e-commerce sites on SAP Hybris. So I knew what that landscape looked like, what that ecosystem looked like. My focus when I took this role was to understand what is next, what is emerging, what is the next generation of technologies here, and how are they different from the market leaders of the day, which was summer and fall of 2019. And as I went through that evaluation journey, talking to vendors, within the first 10 minutes, every single e-commerce platform vendor told us that they were transforming their platform to be API first, API led, API compliant, API blank, insert your own objective for your own adventure, if you will. So there was no argument between the vendors. They were all saying the same things. They were all telling us that the future is going to be API-led or API-driven, and we are going to make our platforms API-compliant to work in that future. So we took that insight. We walked away from that and said, in a world where all the platforms are exposing capabilities through APIs, what do we need to do to run a successful site, a successful e-commerce business? We said all of these technologies that are exposed through APIs, we should consume those APIs and we should expose our own set of APIs to the front end, to the consumer, and make all of these interactions happen through APIs. So we drew up an architecture very similar to the one that you saw on screen from Metrolinx and other partners this morning, other Content Stack customers. If we had a slide for our architecture, would look very similar, right? There's really not a whole lot of variation here. Essentially, you've got a front end, you've got an API layer, you've got a whole bunch of SaaS platforms that are exposing capabilities through APIs, and you connect them all together at the API layer. Typically, that's called a BFF design pattern. If you're familiar, in mock, we use the term headless. There's also, if you're running an existing site that's on a monolith, we use another term called the strangulation pattern. We use a lot of gory terms. For some reason, we are fond of the zombie culture. But that's sort of the approach, right? You build a wrapper around your existing set of platforms, and you take the capabilities that are available in that platform that are non-API based, you expose them as APIs through this sort of wrapper layer, and then you connect all the systems together through APIs. What it allows you to do is, over time, if you have a monolith in your landscape somewhere that you want to make disappear, you shrink the monolith. In my case, we started greenfield. We did not have that monolith. If you're listening and you're mock curious and you're on the mock journey, the approach is to basically shrink that mock non-mock stack to the point where all the capabilities are exposed through APIs, and then you can take bits and pieces out of that monolith and bring in best-of-breed solutions that work well and do that one thing really well. I think it was ASIC's Mindy who was talking about having a whole lot of different systems, Marketo for one thing, Dynamic Yield for another. There are solutions that do both of those things, but if you wanted to do, personalization and email targeting separately and using best-of-breed solutions, the approach that ASICS has taken, that's a very viable answer in the mock world. You get a single vendor that focuses on one thing particularly well and goes deep into that space and explores all the sort of use cases and all the niches really, really well. So that helps in your mock journey.
Thanks, Gireesh. So we heard about the mock journey for Dawn Foods. Lee, what are some of the hard questions that you should be asking as an organization?
There's lots. Mindy pointed out a bunch of those this morning. That was a great talk. But the questions around, like, there's business questions, there's technical questions, there's internal questions, there's external questions, right? So business questions is, what does your business want? Like, are you looking at, like, how are you making their lives easier, right? Who are your first person personas within this ecosystem? Is it your customer? It should always be your customer. But within the business, is it people like your day-to-day operators where it takes 4 to 5 hours for them to do one task? Can we cut that down and save time and money there? Can we do it in efficiencies of being able to do, hey, our competitors just did a flash sale, let's get ours up right now, right? And our time to impact is now measured in minutes, not weeks, right? Because there's, how many times are you in a suite where it takes a week just to change something for a sale, right? That's one of the number one complaints we hear is our suite, our monolith, it's just become so cumbersome, it's impossible to do. So find the things that are the low-hanging fruit that you can ask yourself the questions on, where we can bring the biggest ROI fast, and turn that around and say, now your business is seeing change right away. That'll help you buy into it, right? And then on the tech side, what are the platforms that we want to use? What are the technologies we want to use, right? Those are all your choices to make. And at the end of the day, like, what's our North Star? What's our goal that we're moving towards, right? Because you're never going to get it all at once. It's a project that's never done. That's the other key thing that you've got to get buy-in. You're always going to iterate, right? It used to be with the suites that you'd put in it, you put it in, and it was done for the next 5 to 10 years. You wouldn't change it, right? Now it's continuous. You're just constantly running. You're constantly changing, right? As the business changes, the world changes, right? So those are the types of things that you have to ask yourself around how you're planning this. And you have to, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
I've said this last year. I've said this last week. I'm saying it today. I'll say it next week. I'll be saying it next year. You should not be asking, should I go mock? You've already, gotten yourself strike one if you ask that question. The question you should be asking is, what are my business ambitions? What are our business goals that we're looking to achieve? And how do we go about achieving those business goals? If in the process of answering that business goal question, what's our ambition, what's our goal, what's our vision, you get to a point where we need agility. We need to be able to react. We need to be nimble. We need to be fast. We need to be flexible. We need to be scalable. We need to be able to react to the flash sale, competitor flash sale kind of use cases quickly, same day or within the same hour. Those are the use cases that then you start to say, okay, this is not possible with the stack we have, so we need to look at alternate solutions here that we can then go leverage and take advantage of. And that is where you start to go take off pieces and make them API compliant, go the mock journey there.
Great. And so I got to ask the obvious question, because we are at a content stack event after all. What made you choose them over their competition?
Shout out to my business partner user here, Abby Cox. When we were looking at the commerce platforms, right, it was fairly obvious. Most of the time, the commerce platforms, the commerce APIs, are not things that a business user will interact with. It's the developers that are working with it day in and day out. So the developers drive the commerce selection. But once you're done, when you start thinking about content, your technical users, your developers, are not in it or don't want to be in it every day. For them, the content workflow and all that work around the content and content management is somewhat burdensome, onerous to what their day-to-day is, right? They want to go write code. They don't want to handhold publishing content. They don't want to be fixing image publishing issues. They don't want to look at why a certain piece of content is showing different ways in different viewports and whatnot. For them, they want to know that a business user can do what they want to do without me getting involved and without the developer getting involved, and they want to move on to the next project and to the next feature. So from that point of view, when we looked at the 4 finalists when we were selecting CMS, we looked at 2 headless solutions and 2 non-headless solutions. For some of the architectural reasons, we excluded the non-headless solutions or the monoliths. We came down to between the 2 headless solutions. We looked at solution 1. As we were looking at the demo, my business partner and I were sitting next to each other. I looked at her and I said, this UI completely makes sense to me. She said, I don't know what I'm looking at. Same thing happened with the headless solution B. I said, this looks okay to me. She said, this UI is very intuitive, perfectly makes sense. So we went with the UI and the solution that made sense with the business user, because they're the users that are in that tool, in that service all day, every day, right? It needs to make sense to the users of the service. At the end of the day, there's something called employee experience, and it matters. If you give your employees a happy experience, but your customers a great experience, you'll have great customers, but your employees keep churning, right? You need to maintain a balance of employee experience and customer experience. So we chose the tool that gave the greatest employee experience. There was not a whole lot of choosing to do from a technical point of view, between the 2 headless solutions. And in the end, Content Stack with its better business user tooling one. And even today, our business users, again, you can talk to Abby in the back. She'll tell you all the nice things she's been doing with Content Stack in the last few months.
Wonderful. So that kind of leads me to the next section, right? Winning mix with solutions. So what made you choose a separate CMS versus, we see CMS as a part of different solutions already. So what made you choose something separate versus just, okay, it's got something as part of their e-commerce platform?
The good news here is we chose an e-commerce platform in Commerce Tools that did not have any content management capabilities. They are very focused. Again, all of the mock alliance members are very focused on doing their thing well. They don't encroach on other areas. An e-commerce platform will not suddenly become a CMS one day. None of the e-commerce vendors will wake up and say, I need to build a CMS, or I need to build an OMS, or I need to build a, WMS, what have you. They know what they're good at, they know what they're best at, and they want to focus deeper and deeper in that area and not try to build around. The ecosystem is built with partnerships, right? There are great partnerships within the Mock Alliance. There are multiple e-commerce vendors out there. There are multiple CMS vendors out there because, there are partnerships between all of these providers. The ecosystem makes sense. We may have chosen one particular CMS. A different Commerce Tools customer might have chosen something else, right? And Lee might have implemented both of them.
Yep, that's and that's the great thing about Mock and being an SI is we can work across the ecosystem. So we have experience. So the way we're built, we're a Mock practice. We're not a Content Stack practice and a Commerce Tools practice. We're a Mock practice. So if you come to us and say, hey, we have Content Stack, but this is our e-commerce platform, can you do that? The answer is yes, simply put, right? The great thing is we also have all of the older techs in our practices as well. So if there's some legacy tech still floating around in your organization, we can do that too, right? So that's the value of the partnership, and it's a partnership between the customer, the vendor, and the SI, right? And it's a three-way partnership. It's not and that's the future. Like when I said it's an ongoing marathon, that is the partnership. You're not bringing them in to do one thing. You're bringing them in for that long-term prosperity of the actual system.
Great to hear. So you implemented Mock. How long did it take to do the implementation?
We started with a team of two, Bob Howland and myself, at the beginning of January. So essentially no team. I just had identified platforms and systems integrator. And we had already committed to the organization that we would launch e-commerce by July 2020.
Wait, hang on. You started in January and you promised by July?
Oh yeah. We first made the promise, and then we started work.
Wait, that's the cart in front of the horse, is it not?
Well, sometimes you have to do things the old school way.
So obviously it went through successfully. Any learnings from that journey, that very quick journey?
Yeah. So again, the Mock ecosystem and the technologies working with APIs, developers are very familiar with this. They have worked with APIs even in previous generation of the ecosystem. Once you build a monolith and put a monolith in place, all you're doing is working with APIs. So engineering teams everywhere, especially in e-commerce, have been working with APIs for a really long time. This is not a new paradigm for them. This is not a new concept. REST APIs have been around since mid-2000s, popularized due to the rise of iPhones. SOAP APIs have been around for even longer. I think 2003 or 2002 is when they became the de facto standard until iPhone came along. So these API paradigms have been around for a really long time, over 20 years. And developers know how to work with them. They know how to use them. They know how to do best practice API development. And there are open source frameworks that help them create their own microservices fairly rapidly. So it wasn't a case of we needed to do a lot of work in research and find developers and all that. We just needed to hire people who had experience working with APIs. And we worked with EPAM systems to go from the two people sitting in at a table to a full-blown e-commerce launch in about 22 weeks.
22 weeks. How many of you guys had something gone that fast and that successful? I know I was talking to some of you last night and you're like, what's going on? I think we're dealing with a couple of situations ourselves where people are asking right away.
And if you're asking me to do this all over again today, I would probably tell you that it can be done in 16 weeks. Some of the things that we looked at and did not choose to move forward with, front-end as a service is a great example there. We looked at it. We thought that space was a little too new, but maturing quickly. My impression at the time was this will take about 2 years to mature. It's not there yet for enterprise-grade use. Those are matured, and some of them have been acquired already. So that accelerates the pace at which you can do this. You can do it in 16 weeks now. Companies like Vercel, Netlify are taking on front-end as a service, taking on infrastructure as a service, and CI/CD as a service, and making it even more convenient for development teams to go faster.
So then we talked about development and how quick it can get done, right? And can get done even faster than what he originally told us. But then it also goes into the long-term, the marathon that Lee was talking about. So what's next? What's next in the strategy for Dawn Foods? Obviously without sharing too much information, please, but feel free if you want. But what's next? What's the next thing to make sure that you're always on top of the next, if there is another pandemic, or things like that from there?
We don't know what's next in terms of global healthcare. But what I can tell you is, in the 6 months post-launch, we did more development work than the 6 months before launch. Because we had the foundation, it gave us the velocity to be able to run faster. We had the standards, we had the systems in place, we had the CI/CD, we had the tooling, we had security scanners, everything in place that accelerated our growth and our development efforts. So as a point of reference, I think we launched with about 200,000 lines of code. We probably ended the year 2020 with about 700,000 lines of code. So more than 3x the amount of code that we had going into launch. So we were able to do all that because we were able to just work really fast with the team we had. In terms of what's next, we just launched a brand new experience. When we launched our e-commerce site 3 years ago, we launched it as a standalone. We had a corporate marketing site that was on a different CMS and a monolith stack on .NET technologies. And when we launched the new e-commerce site, our business users said, we need to move our corporate stack onto this. And it took us some time. We got started sometime last year, and we launched that about 6 weeks ago. So the US site, donfoods.com, is now live on that stack, integrates content and commerce really well. There is over 700 recipes. This is a pretty significant number in the baking industry. Most of our competitors have less than 50 or 75 recipes. We have over 700 on our website. 700, right, Abby? She's keeping count. So we have a lot of that expertise and insights. We do a 3-year research to develop understanding of what is the next trend in the bakery space, and we publish it once every 3 years. So we just launched that trends last year in September, coinciding with a major industry conference that happens in the baking industry. And the next cycle of research is underway to understand what the trend will be in 2025. So we do that kind of research, and that's available for free for anybody to go see on our website, donfoods.com/insights, I think. So you can get those kind of deep research. You can get recipes. You can get all the products you want to make those recipes with, all on the same site, on the same pages, in fact. So that's marrying up functionality that we have within Content Stack and available through commerce tools and published into a single site.
Lee, what about yourself? What have you seen as far as all the different practices? We've heard about Don Foods.
Mm-hmm.
Any samples that you can share?
Well, actually, I want to use the Don Foods just as an example of how that grows, because they started with just e-commerce and they took that stack. And how often do you buy something for one particular business case and that's all you use it for? In this case, they bought Content Stack and they launched it with e-commerce, and now, we have to do the rest of our website. We don't have to go out and buy a new stack. It's already here. We've already built it. The foundation is here. This is just recycling the same process, building on it and building on it again. And you're building that same foundation. You're not going out and rebuilding another foundation for a different business case, right? You're able to reuse those same components and leverage that investment that you've already put in there, which in the long run gives you a much better ROI on these products. So you don't just look at what's my ROI on this one particular use case that I'm buying it on? What I need to look at this holistically across my company.
So let me pull on that thread about ROI, because everybody asks that. I've been in this industry now for about a year and a bit, but we always want to make sure that we maximize our spend on technology, right? So you're talking about building up the stack, making sure that you get the maximum return from the technology that in mock. But let's use the case also that a lot of you guys might be seeing out there, the legacy, the monolith, as we heard this morning. How do you do that conversation to the executives to say, hey, we need to switch off of something that we've spent millions of dollars on, we have licensing fees and all the rest of it, and now move over to this type of technology from there?
There's a few ways to look at it. Like, one is the old saying, like, don't throw good money after bad. Just because you're putting $1 million a year into your existing technology stack doesn't mean that's good money going into a good stack, right? There comes a time where, how long does it take to do that launch, right? So once you're on a mock stack, you're constantly releasing, right? So you need a change, you do that change, and 2 weeks later, it's out the door, assuming that you're just on a 2-week agile cycle and not yet up to a full CI/CD where it's continuous. You look at the monolithic stack, if you were doing a change, you're on a 6-month release cycle probably for this thing to go out the door. So you do that change, and in 6 months, it might happen. But how long does that take? What's the lost opportunity cost when, hey, I want to launch that feature, and that's going to do, let's say recipe matching to ingredients, and that feature to get out the door. Well, if it takes 6 months to get that out the door, there's 6 months of lost cross-sell opportunity cost in there. If I can launch that in 2 weeks, now it's only 2 weeks of lost opportunity cost, and the goal is to get that down to a day. right? And so that feature is there, it goes through the QA and it's out the door, right? And your dev cycles become so much shorter. And that's where they're really going to start to see that fast turnaround and that high speed ROI. And the hard part about that, of course, is that that's a soft cost. You can't actually, it's really hard to put a dollar figure on lost opportunity on something like that, right? And that's the hard sell.
Great.
There are other advantages as well. If you see something in your stack not performing, or you're exceeding the limits of, we actually did this in our case. The search we were using when we launched the site, we realized that we were maxing out on the capabilities of that search technology. So we went out, we looked at what's available, and we picked a different search engine. And 4 weeks of development work later, it was in production on December 22nd. And the team that worked on it and everyone else took the rest of the week off after to go celebrate.
So last question I have for you guys before then we'll open it up to everyone here to ask their questions around. We're talking about long-term strategy, talking about our next steps from there. You talked about every 3 years you bring out the roadmap of what you want to do. How do you guys basically read the leaves through the noise? Like everybody's got something new coming up. This one can do this a little bit better than that one. This one here's a new CMS platform. Here's a new e-commerce platform. How do you kind of wade through all of that to find this is the best product for what you need from there?
For us, the answer starts with, what's our customer telling us? We have a voice of customer program. We collect feedback. We collect insights, input, and we understand what the customer is looking for. Mm-hmm. And we go from there. If the customer is asking for something, then we go out and see, can we do this with the technology we have, with the stack we have, or is this something that we need to go buy additional technology for? If so, what is available out there? And then talking to really smart people in this room, people outside this room at this conference, talking to each other, learning from each other's experiences, talking to folks like Lee and the 59,800 people behind Lee and Brian at EPAM and other agencies that, they have smart people. So trying to find all of those people that are way smarter than us and trying to have them educate us on what we should think about, what we should consider, and keep those in mind. Meet new and interesting startups and enterprise technology companies every once in a while, and keep in touch with them. You don't know when you will run into a use case that will necessitate using one of those services, right? So just keep your eyes and ears open, and something that you hear about 2 or 3 years later might be something that you consider. I heard about commerce tools way back in 2015, 2016 timeframe. I wasn't going to replace what I had at the time with the commerce tools, but then commerce tools was in the back of my mind when I started a new evaluation process in 2019. That was a name on the table that was included in the evaluation process. So as you hear about them, you just catalog those things, and you come back to them when you're ready.
Anything you want to add in?
Very, very similar. Yeah, it's the research. And the key thing is, don't take any single data point as the truth, right? You need many data points, and that will form a trend. And that trend is what you're going to want to look at.
So guys, thank you very much for this. Just want to kind of go through a couple things. Next steps. You heard about composable heroes this morning. They talked about it quite extensively at the upstairs. We helped create that. We were one of the developers in the back end doing this. And this is something that we're looking to do it as a bit of a roadshow as well, to take it out to different events around. So go have your picture taken. I've yet to do it myself. I really want to see what I end up looking like. I'm just waiting for the camera to cut me off at my neck, so I'll be the headless man or something like that.
I tried sending my composable hero to this instead of me.
We're not quite there yet.
But yeah, feel free to go that. And then also you'll see us in the innovation corner over there, and we have the booth upstairs. So feel free to come talk if there's any questions that we haven't asked or I haven't asked that you guys are thinking about. Speaking of which, is there any questions that I haven't asked, guys, that you'd like to pick these two guys' brains on? Yes, madam.
Repeating the question for folks online. The question was, how has our organization changed after we've gone through this journey? So my organization has changed a lot because I started with 0 and I'm now up to 23 team members. So I would say we've added a lot of digital talent, a lot of technology talent to our team. We have helped other areas of our business understand what we're doing. We're bringing data, we're bringing analyses. We can see trends that are leading indicators that help our marketing, that help our forecasting, that help our manufacturing, all the way back at the plants. What's happening with our customers can now be extracted all the way out to how we plan our manufacturing. If you're in a manufacturing business, you can't really turn a ship around that fast. It typically takes 3 to 4 weeks to, react to any trends you're seeing. So it gives us the early warning system to be able to go back all the way to say, hey, we're seeing an elevated demand for cake mixes. Do we have enough raw material to run additional batches or additional lines? So those are some of the conversations we're having. We're also reacting. We've been in a very reactionary world with supply chain shortages, especially as a agriculture-based business. And shortages essentially are not stemming from manufacturing shortages, but from agricultural issues all over and export challenges because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So we've got a whole lot of other issues that we're working around, and we can see the data, we can see the trends, and we can take that to our org and have a really data-driven conversation. Our marketing team has picked up a whole lot of skills around content management in the last 2.5, 3 years that they've taken over and owned the content publishing, content management cycle on e-commerce. So all of those things are just elevating, upskilling a whole lot of our team.
Any other questions, ladies, gents? Yes, sir.
What's our biggest headache implementing this stack? I think if you're coming from a monolith, it's a shift in mindset, right? Because you have one vendor, you have one technology stack, and you go to that vendor, you go to a services partner that works well with that vendor. In a mock stack, that is not the case. You have to have a engineering team, you have to have a SRE team that understands how to troubleshoot the stack. Where are my potential points of issues that are caused by anything, right? So you need to look at every point of connection or every integration, every API to see where you're having issues. So some of the skill set is slightly different. You don't have a single APM tool that can help with this kind of stack, but there are some emerging things that are very promising on that front as well. So even on that front, there are quite a lot of step function changes happening.
So guys, I think we're at time here. Don't want to take away from everybody else, but if you do have any other questions, you didn't want to ask it out in public, feel free to come talk to us. We're going to be up at the booth there. Metrolinx people are going to be there as well. So feel free to come, tap us on the shoulder. I'm kind of hard to miss, I think, right? And yes, I've made that joke a million times since I was like 16.
And I've heard that joke a million times every time we do that.
Gireesh, thank you very much for running in and taking care of your fire and running into this and having a little chat with us. Lee, thanks for the chat. And everybody here, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.